Given the current status of things in the US, it's easy to view a move abroad as an escape hatch, as a way to get away. But what if moving up to another country was more of an opportunity to envision a new way of living or create a brand new life? That's what we're talking about today. But first, let me introduce myself in case you are new to the channel. I'm Adelia Borishade. I left the US 8 years ago and have since lived in 4 different countries, including Mexico, my adopted homeland. I'm a financial educator and co host of Reclaim the Retreat. On this channel, I help people like you live their best lives by demystifying travel, money, and everything in between. If that sounds like the kind of content you have been looking for, you found it. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button. That way, YouTube knows to bring more of my content to your feed. To discuss this idea of using a move abroad to redefine your life, I am joined by 2 guests. The first of which is Tracy Collins, an author, former CEO, business strategist, and Michelle Wedderburn, who is the founder of Casa Elm, a beautiful guest house in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Tracy, when did you decide to leave the US?
Honestly, in 2015, I started reconstructing my life because I knew I wanted to live abroad. I hadn't even met Honey yet. She came along in 2018. And my first question to her was, "Do you have a passport?" Like on that first date, because I knew I wasn't going to be in the States long. But in 2015 was when I knew I wanted to leave the United States and, effectively made the transition by August 19th, 2023. Granted, lots of things happened in between, but yeah, that's when I knew.
All right. And Michelle, I was initially going to ask, when did you decide to leave the US? But like, you're not an American.
No, but I grew up in the US. Yeah, I was born in Toronto, and my parents are originally from Jamaica, and they migrated to Canada in the 60s, along with a lot of other Jamaicans. It was just easier to live and get your citizenship or residency in Canada than it was in the United States. So my parents then moved into Connecticut. I think it was in the early 70s. So I was born in Toronto, and then eventually we moved to Connecticut.
Like, at what point did you like finally start taking action or say, okay, by this point, I am leaving? When did that happen for you?
I have to say that I felt that I always wanted to live somewhere else. I think my experiences with traveling to Canada a lot as a child, going to places like Montreal and Quebec, it just felt more nostalgic somehow and more interesting than where I grew up. So I think I always had the travel bug, but in terms of just really looking into it, I would say that I started, funny enough, I actually started looking at options, like seriously looking at options when I was pregnant. So I would say in 2011, I just always had that sense of I didn't want to raise my son in the United States. I also admired a lot of my European friends and the fact that they had access to so many different countries as a child, and they had, they spoke multiple languages. So it was just very intriguing to me to hopefully grasp that kind of experience for my child. So fast forward to 2015 or so, I really started to dig deeper into where could we move to? And Mexico wasn't at the top of the list initially, but that's when I really started to dig deep into it.
for both of you, this has been something that's kind of been a possibility, been in the back of your mind for several years. Why Mexico?
I'll go. Mexico wasn't even on my radar at all. Because when I knew I wanted to live abroad, it was always Costa Rica. Even still, Costa Rica resonates with my spirit. I think it's just the nature girl in me. But, being from California, it was like, why are you going to Mexico? It's like right down the street. It's like no big deal. When are you going to Tijuana or Ensenada for? Like, what's this whole Tulum thing? And then it just, in social, being on social media, the pictures, the images, the videos of Tulum. And I said, let me go see what this was about. And then simultaneously, I have a really good friend who was like, Tracy, you've got to go to Mexico. I'm like, why are we going to Mexico? And she's like, a white lady, a few years older than me. And she's actually she has both of my children now, the two younger ones, like they're up there with her, and she lives in Portland. I'm like, why are we going to Mexico? She was like, Tracy, go. So I booked a Mother's Day trip and I went in 2022, May of 2022. And when I tell you, I remember landing at the airport in Cancun, and I remember walking outside and our driver who was like, can I take your bags? And I remember my pink duffel bag that I have and him carrying it. And in that moment, I felt like, I don't have to carry this. I don't have to do something for myself. And he was, they walked us to the shuttle. And from that moment, it was like, that was my really true first experience of being treated well as a Black woman. Even though, like, I've been to Dubai and I've been to London and I've been, to other parts of the world, Cuba and Jamaica and, Haiti. But Mexico was like, here, let me take care of you. And in that moment, that's what I felt. And day 4 of that day 5 trip, I was like, I'm moving to Mexico. And my daughter looked at me and she was like, you're moving to Mexico, Mom? But here I am.
Um, okay, so I'll give you my first time in Mexico story, which was in 2005. And I don't know that I was opposed to coming to Mexico. The opportunity to do so just didn't arise prior to that time frame. I did a lot of like travel in Europe, and then some, for whatever reason, that's where I was for the most part, and then traveling around the United States. And we were invited by a couple. The woman's Afro Mexicano, but grew up in the US, and her husband. And they had a place here. They were an older couple. So, San Miguel kind of, I think, started really attracting a lot of artists and also retirees. At that point, it was a lot less than it is now. And so I remember when we got here, it was super sleepy, but that was my first trip to Mexico and first place in Mexico that we stayed. I think we flew into Mexico City and we rented a car and we actually drove to San Miguel and didn't stay in Mexico City because I remember just it being a kind of, we're just passing through. So anyway, when we get to San Miguel, it was very sleepy, very different, but still feeling very up and coming. So fast forward through those few years, my ex and I, we ended up buying property in Oaxaca, building a house on the beach, the whole nine. So I had a lot of experience coming to Mexico, not necessarily living, but spending a lot of time here, meaning like a month at a time going back. But it was always in a sleepy area, right? It was always kind of somewhere where I just like, I don't think I would want to live there. So I didn't have the exposure to the city life. Like had I been exposed more to like Mexico City or somewhere else, I had no idea like these places existed. I probably would have been more drawn to live in Mexico back then. But because my experiences were very rural, I kind of felt it as more of a vacation thing. So fast forward when I started looking at really moving abroad in 2015, 16, Mexico also was not at the top of my list. even though I had traveled many a times in and out of Mexico. But all of my experiences were always positive. And the same as Tracy said, the people were always kind. Even though I always came with my stereotypes, but I always had an amazing experience with the locals, eating out, moving around in our car, just on a regular, streets and things like that. And I never felt that I had a negative experience in Mexico. So I started to research Costa Rica, Panama. I think Italy was initially at the top of the list. And then Mexico just kept popping up. When you do the search, it's like the top X amount of countries to live or move to if you want to live somewhere else. And I say, why not Mexico? I know people there. I've always had a good time. So why not? And then I started to take it a little bit more serious and it made sense. And so I did the research trips, multiples, and it just made sense and it felt right. For me, it was kind of that epiphany moment where I came by myself on the second trip. And I remember waking up the next morning and walking down just a street in Centro, and it just hit me. This is it. This is where I need to be. This is right.
Well, I ask because while this video is not about moving to Mexico or choosing Mexico as a destination, here are the three of us all ended up in Mexico. And I'll just chime in and say Mexico was not on my list either. Um, Initially, I was not even considering Latin America at all. But I ended up working in Honduras because there was just something in the back of my head that kept saying, you ought to learn Spanish. So I don't know. I think there is something to take away in that you know, often we think, oh, we know, and this is the way it's got to be, and this is the way it's going to unfold. And then you get out there and you start experiencing some things, and then you discover a place can be what you need, even though it wasn't even on your radar.
I agree. I think the people are the attraction, and we don't hear enough about that. We just hear about the negative, the cartels, the kidnapping, all the stuff that to me is propaganda. You don't hear enough about how amazing the culture and the people are here. I even have goosebumps saying it because I have never been anywhere that it's been this amazing in terms of integrating, moving around. I mean, I've been to beautiful places, beautiful countries, but the culture has not been this inviting. Even in South America, not even there, not even there.
So you both, for varying reasons. Now, you mentioned, Michelle, you were pregnant and you were faced with the reality of raising a child in the United States, and you weren't completely sold on that. Now, with you, Tracy, you said you were redesigning your life. What was your life like previously that it needed to be revamped?
Well, according to American society, it didn't at all. I checked all the boxes. Not only did I have my own business, I had my own corporation. Not, I was a homeowner. I had the big fancy car. It was all of the boxes were checked. And the more it seemed like that I had acquired, I became like mean, which isn't hard because I'm moody already, so I don't need any help in that department. so, but it just felt like I just had so many people who were latched on to me that I needed to take care of, meaning like with my company and then my, my kids. And it was just too much. And it was just a lot of pressure to constantly like produce and constantly prove and like I checked all the boxes. I built it's like I did all the things they said I was supposed to do and was miserable. I was miserable. So in creating my company, I created my company to be the legacy that it continues to be without me. I didn't want to run it anymore. So selling it was a part of my exit strategy. So for me, redesigning my life meant now it's time for me. Like my kids are grown. I married my best friend. Y'all can have this company. Now let me live my life.
Whether it's intentional or not, I think that fits kind of with the theme of, you know, redefining your life and doing it abroad. Was there ever a moment that you thought you would do this life reset, but you would stay in the US?
Never. Never. It was that never even entered my mind ever. Like even hearing you say it seems foreign to me. That's how
Why
foreign
do you think
it
that
was
is?
never, because I never felt an attachment with that land. I feel as Black women, we spend as Black people, but I'm speaking as a Black woman. We spend so much time fighting and paying that Black tax and proving, and we're already overqualified just for existing. So it's like I'm tired of dealing with y'all and the constant moving of the goalposts. Like, no, no.
Okay. Um, Now, Michelle, would you say that having I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but a better place to raise your son, do you think that was like, how much of the decision to move abroad would you say? Was that like 50%? Was that 100%? 27.8?
Girl, it was probably close to 95%. Not just for him, but that was a huge part of my decision. I found myself increasingly very uncomfortable living in the United States as a mom, a single mom. The neighborhood I lived in, the examples of children and boys in their teens, and Micah was maybe 3 at the time. And all I could see was the environment we're in is going to wipe away all the good parenting that I'm going to be doing for the next 10, 12 years. And he's just going to connect with the wrong person. And that all that work is going to go down the toilet. And I know that's probably pretty dramatic, but I saw so many bad examples of where teens were going in South Florida, because that's where I was living at the time. I didn't want to move back to Connecticut, and be closer to family and things like that. One, I didn't want to be around that weather. But I just remember a few times opening, like my front door, and they had like on the ground, there would be like those little cocaine bags. And that just freaked me out. The neighborhood that I was in, it wasn't like hood, but it was just, this was such a common way of people existing. I lived in an area where they had the highest rehab centers in the United States, right? Boynton, Delray Beach. And I was in South Florida. I went out and partied, so I saw how free the drugs were flowing and all the things. In addition, my biggest fear was gun violence. Being in a place, an area where you go out and you're walking through metal detectors and things like that. I know not everywhere was that way, but some of the places I went to, that's how it was. And I just remember thinking, like, this is too normal, right? Kids having to walk through metal detectors to go to school. The last school year and only kindergarten actual school year that Micah did, they had drills for active shooters, red flags, and he was telling me the stories. This is like a 5-year-old telling me we had to pile in the bathroom. And, there was someone that was, I think, an active shooter, not on campus, but somewhere around, like a bank robbery had happened. And this was West Palm Beach. So it's not like, some hardcore ghetto neighborhood. So for me, it was just this constant need to get away from this environment, because of my travels and my previous experiences as an adult and having my child later. There were just very specific things that I learned as an adult that I wanted him to experience as a child. One was learning another language, living in a healthy environment where I didn't feel I had to combat his day to day experiences at school with other people, friends, and the whole nine. So for me, it was imperative to get the heck out of the United States. I didn't even, I wasn't concerned about the academics and all these things. I was more concerned about his safety. You know, violence against Black boys, Black men. I was concerned about violence in school, gun violence, mass shootings, drugs. That's too much. I'm a single parent. You know, I'm running a business over there. How would I monitor and fight all of these things? It's too much. You know, you need a support system, and that's what I have here. I have a support system. I have a complete village of so many people that I did not have in the United States. If I wanted to go out and do something by myself, I had to wait for my mother to come to Florida and spend time with us so I could have a life. That's how much of a non-existent support system in my life back then.
What do y'all think of, like, this is something I've seen said in multiple spaces where people are discussing leaving the US and moving abroad. And I'm curious as to what y'all think about this idea that those of us who leave, we are running away.
Running away from the nonsense. I mean,
I, like running away from where like our ancestors built this land.
Running away, this is not something that I say, but it's like that you're running away maybe instead of staying and fixing, but I don't know. So I was just curious, like, what were your thoughts on that? That, you're kind of avoiding the problem, avoiding the issue, running away from it by choosing to move somewhere else.
I mean, I look at us as our ancestors' wildest dreams because if they would have could have left from a stolen land, they would have as well. So, I mean, a stolen land amongst a stolen people. So we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. You know, they had to fight because they in that time frame that was a mechanism of survival. And what we're doing also is a mechanism of survival. Black people have roamed the earth since pre colonialism, since pre all of the things. So, us doing what we're doing, we're just a reverse migration of what originally was. Unfortunately, there are a lot of us who think you have to stay and fight. I did that. Check my resume. I've done that already, and that's the truth. And I will tell you this, it does nothing but kill you. It raises your blood pressure, it raises your cortisol levels, it makes you angry, it makes you hyper vigilant, and it kills you. And I choose not to live my life that way anymore. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. And just like you, I see the conversations that are happening, and there's nothing wrong with feeling the way that you feel. If you feel like you're going to fight and this is the land that your ancestors and built, and you got your that's you. I choose to live my life easier, peaceful, in a place where I can feel safe. And the problem is we have lived in such a hypervigilant state for so long that your nervous system doesn't even know what it's like to relax. So to take you out of that environment, to even think about that, it begins to feel foreign. So obviously, when you can't fathom something for yourself, why would you be able to see it for somebody else? So yeah.
I just say if they want to call it running away, then here I go, suitcase dust behind me. Because honestly, I growing up in the United States, I never felt that I fit in anyway. And I think it's because my parents were from the islands, and I do even to now in this day feel that I missed out on my blackness. My culture, I'm a part of it. It's my heritage, but I didn't live there. And it's one of those things where, yes, our parents migrated to another place so they could have a better life, in terms of economics and stuff like that. However, I still feel robbed of that. And I say that, again, it's not to bash the US because clearly we get a lot of opportunities in terms of our money, our earning potential, and things like that that other countries don't necessarily have, or you have to work so much harder to get it. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that they moved to Canada and I was born there, and then we went to Connecticut, blah blah blah. At the end of the day, as Tracy said, if history went the way it was supposed to, we wouldn't be there in the first place. So for me, I feel this is a blessing to be able to choose where I want to live and feel received and accepted in that place. Even though Mexico is not my heritage, not my homeland, it still receives me. And as much as I love my heritage and I love Jamaica, I know that it's hard there. And that's the reason I'm grateful that my parents were able to move somewhere else. But I choose to be here. And so for me, it's not about running away. If I were running from anything, it would be the problems and all the stress, as Tracy mentioned, all the extra work that I probably have to put in to raise my child. And maybe, who knows, would it even be worth it? It takes one mistake. It takes one wrong door that you knock on, and maybe your kid's going to get shot, right? This happens all the time. And so I just don't want to be in a space like that. I don't want to live in a war zone. I don't want a war zone lifestyle. So yeah, if it's running away,
Well,
then
I think
yes, I ran
y'all
away.
both bring up a point that, okay, it is, to a certain degree, it is going away. Because to me, running away sounds like you haven't given it any thought, that, it's very spur of the moment, that sort of thing. But I think it is appropriate to leave places that are unsafe for you, that don't treat you well. So I think for the people who kind of have that mindset that, like, oh, y'all are just running away from the problems. Well, that is a valid choice, because everybody is not, let me fix it. But it's also going toward something. And you mentioned a little bit of that, Michelle, that you've got a support system, that you're going toward a welcoming community. What has been your experience, Tracy, with, because again, we said you have moved to a country that wasn't even on your radar initially. And so you're a Black woman, you have moved to this, for the most part, not a Black country. How would you say you've been received? Okay. Something that you said, Michelle, that I am just curious about, that, you are the child of immigrants. There's a little bit of what you feel you missed out on because your parents chose to immigrate. Do you have any concerns for your son in that way? Because you've kind of made a similar choice to immigrate. And, I just said, yes, there are Afro Mexicans, but Mexico is not a Black country per se. So, do you have any feelings about that, or any concerns about him feeling that kind of way in the way that you do?
When I first moved here, I had a friend ask me, kind of this question. And funny enough, I had never given it a thought, because she said to me, well, are you concerned about him learning about his Blackness and his Black culture? And I remember kind of almost stopping as I was talking to her. And I was like, gosh, I never crossed my mind, because I didn't come here to Mexico thinking about that aspect of his life. I think in my mind, I was like, well, I'm Black, so he'll get something out of that. And I'm sure we'll travel to the US, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel that we can't have everything. And what he's getting is more than just that aspect. And I also feel that we don't really get the fullness of our Blackness in the United States either, depending on where we are. So the benefit for Micah right now is that he's bilingual. He will probably be trilingual and maybe speak 4 languages by the time it's all said and done. He has access to a lot more things that I can afford. We have the village experience, but what I've done is sent him over to his Caribbean family. So he gets the Blackness over there. And I'm very grateful that he can immerse himself into that experience because I do think it is important. So I don't want it to seem like, whatever. But I feel that the balance that he has in his life is enough for him to kind of grasp, okay, what is it like to be a child in a Caribbean island experience, which I didn't get, right? He's not in Jamaica, he's in St. Martin. That's his dad's side of the family, but he gets that, right? And to me, that's more than I got growing up in Connecticut. So I think that there's a good balance and he will appreciate both aspects of his
Okay.
life. Yeah.
So, Tracy, you are the most recent uh, mover abroad. You moved in 2023. Have you noticed that your life has changed much? Because we've already established part of the plan, part of your reinvention was included living abroad, and you couldn't imagine resetting your life still in the US. So now that you're a year in, has it changed?
I have friends, and my friends are like my family, and it sounds so cheesy. I know. But I was a black woman in America that didn't have any community outside of like my mama, you know. Yeah, when I left Oakland and moved to Atlanta in 2016, like, I lost connection pretty much with everybody on that side, with the exception of a couple of friends and my family from the Bay. But when I moved to Atlanta and no, you know, this was just my experience. It was like there was a lot of superficiality. So to be able to make genuine connections with Black women that were real, I didn't have to, not that I would put on a camouflage when it comes to my personality. Um, and a community that's like minded and like hearted. So to me, one of the biggest things that has changed is like I actually have community. So much so they talk all day in WhatsApp. But it's a good thing. Like it's a good thing. Like I'm used to it now. I'm used to waking up to Buenos Dias texts and like literally conversations that are happening throughout the day. I'm now used to going to Michelle's house and getting something to eat. Like I'm used to us going out to eat and going to 3 different restaurants in one night. Like, what are you doing? You want to go get some taco? I mean, it's just that. And for Honey, like she has like I have the girls, she has the guys, she's MOC, which is masculine of center. So she gravitates more towards there. But when we come together, it is like family. And it's not something we didn't have in the States. We didn't have that. We were very insulated. We were very, isolated. We were very much like each other's. Now it seems like, yeah, we got each other, but I'm gonna go hang out with the girls. I'll be back. You know what I mean? It's that. And so for me, that is such, I keep saying this, it's literally the community that I prayed for. I remember like praying for a Black woman community. We're all hustlers and grinders. We're all like entrepreneurs. We're all business savvy in some degree. We none of us have the same expertise, which I love. That means we're helping to support each other. What my weakness is, somebody else is smart in. And so to me, with the exception of immersing myself into a beautiful culture that I've always loved. I keep saying being from California because California was once Mexico, so it's it's a it's a gumbo pot of culture and nationality. I mean, yeah, people, but it's I have to me I have the balance of both worlds. I got the black and the Mexican. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened.
But even the community aspect, I do believe that Mexico and its culture just rubs off on us, right? Like we slow down, we're slowing down. I mean, I'm busy all the time, but I'm busy doing things I enjoy. I love, as much as I'm like running around, whatever, I love having people over, and just being able to do a lot of the things I enjoy with this group. And even, even though we haven't met in person, Adelia, having like all of these different people that we get to kind of talk to, I know at some points our paths are going to cross, right? We met, I forget her name, but Luxury Vagabond the other night, and it's like we know each other, right? So it's just this whole thing is just for me, it's so special when people come and they're like, oh, I'm finally here. And I feel like I've been talking to them for a while. And I know you experience it. We all do. It's just special. It's really, really, it's just an amazing experience to have. It's like that sisterhood, worldwide, global kind of. It's beautiful. Yeah. Um, I can say that my life before, in terms of just in general, it was still good. I still had a good existence in the U.S. from a where I lived standpoint. What I was able to do, the things that I engaged in, the traveling and all of that. All of those things were great. I just didn't like the corporate aspect. And I think it became somewhat of a crutch because the people around me in the US in the corporate setting didn't get me, right? Because I always wanted to have my own thing. I wanted to do something. And so there was always that little thing. And sometimes I would be like, is it just me? Like, am I the one? Like, I felt like I just was an oddball, right? Not in a negative way, but, I just didn't fit in. I was never content or happy in that setting. So, being able to be here and be in the space that I am in, understanding it's not easy, but it's almost like you don't have a choice, right? You got to push through this. You got to make it work. You got to keep going, keep moving. It's allowed me, and I think I shared this with the ladies last week as well, with the interview that Tracy and I had, was I think we all have experienced how to become and be more creative and dig down and find the things that we are good at or curious about and just create, right? Build something because I know for myself, I'm like, I'm not leaving Mexico. This has got to work. And it's got to work because I got a kid. I got to feed him and I got to put him in school and all the things. So I think in the US, I was more complacent, sort of that fallback on the job, even though I did have my own business there. I remember at one point my business was kind of like, creeping along a little. I was like, oh, well, what am I going to do? Okay, maybe I'll try this, whatever. But here, it's really been a different type of entrepreneurial experience. And those are the things that I realize now I've come in more into my own, right, as a person, where I feel not like I'm the oddball. I'm just doing my thing and I'm making it work and I'm creative and I can, sometimes it's a little burnout, but I can just keep trying. Okay, what about this idea? Oh, and there's so many things in front of you. But basically the point is that I feel that I've been allowed to explore more of my ideas, being able to connect with Tracy and other women here, as you mentioned, just having like other people who have strengths where you may not, but we come together and we're able to kind of like, okay, do it this way. We're always cracking on Alum, but she's like the little techie, geeky girl in the back, with all her monitors and things. And I'm like, oh, I got another idea today, like little Bambi in the forest with all the endless things that pop in my head. But I feel very excited about it because there's potential in everything, right? We definitely have to work at it. But I think being in a corporate setting in the past didn't allow me the time, because I was bogged down with the 9 to 5 to really explore my, things and my ideas and things like that. So Mexico has definitely allowed me to do that, and I'm super grateful for it.
Absolutely. It changed me. I'm not as hard as I used to be. And I think because my life was so corporate, I had to walk in my masculine energy all the time. And that's exhausting for somebody who really wants to lean into her femininity and move in that energy, like not just from a physical aspect, but in an energetic way of being. And when I tell you, I have seemed like I have shed more tears because that heart chakra is awakening in Mexico. It's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be a G. I'm from Oakland. I'm like a thug. That's so out the window. It's yeah, and it there's still an aspect of me that's always going to be that way, but I'm grateful that I can just, you know, grow into the essence of that feminine energy that I really wanted to tap into, that I didn't have the time to because of the way my life was set up and the way life is set up in the US. And I think a lot of Black women want to experience that, but oftentimes we're told not to bet on ourselves. And I'm a firm believer, if I don't bet on me, who else am I going to bet on? Like, I got to bet on me. So that has been my experience.
Hearing both of you talk about how your life has changed, and with Tracy in just a year, what I am hearing is being outside the US, living abroad, has kind of given you freedom to explore parts of yourself, or a freedom to like unlock parts of yourself that maybe as part of living in the US you had to keep separate, you had to keep under wraps, that sort of thing. Um, Now, y'all are putting on an event, a summit about redefining life abroad, which, after hearing you say these things, seems like, well, duh. Like because I mean, I think this is a little silly question, but I'm going to ask it. Would you say that living abroad has redefined, it has changed your life?
Well, I've been here for 6 years. I have my space. Um, what I've learned is that people need this. They need the information. They need the examples. They need the inspiration from us being here. So I feel like we are carrying the light. We are showing people, and that can be a vulnerable space, because if you're kind of an introvert, you don't want to put your public life out there. In my case, that's sort of how I felt initially. I wanted to educate people about how amazing Mexico was, but I also had like kind of the shield around my child and my personal life and, just things like that. But it's been so rewarding. And I feel that it's a necessary thing. And I've learned to embrace it, because my viewpoint initially 6 years ago was, I visited Mexico. I did the research. I'm going to Mexico. I don't need anybody to validate it. I'm just going. I'll figure it out and I'll do my thing. I made a lot of mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. But I remember initially feeling a little frustrated because people would ask me, "Oh, is there racism? And where's the Black community?" And I would literally respond and say, why are you moving here if that's all you're looking for? Because in my opinion, it's like, move away from what you know and embrace something different. Now, someone said to me, you don't know where they came from, what their experiences have been. Maybe coming outside of their environment could be trauma, right? Whether it's work related or where they live, the neighborhood they live in. Maybe it's just like a few black folks in a predominantly white neighborhood, and why they're wanting to look for people that they feel they fit into a tribe situation. And it hit me. I said, oh, okay, now I'm looking at it from a non-Michelle standpoint, because it's one of those things where someone else's experiences may dictate why they're looking for this kind of circle. And so I said, okay, I live in San Miguel. I love it here. I'm going to talk about San Miguel, and I'm going to talk to other, Black expats in Mexico, so people can see that we are moving to Mexico in different places. And I just wanted to become a light. So, in saying all of that, I feel that all of those things have led to where I am and how I met with Tracy, how I even met with you a few years ago. And in all of the things, we are going to continue to be that inspiration that people need. Not everyone is going to be as brave as us, right? People need that. Yeah.
Okay, so I know that putting on an event is not easy. Ivana and I do week-long retreats, and it ain't easy. So my first question is, given your new life and this freedom you have, why even put on this event? Why create this event? Why do this?
And for me, this is my way of like, I take care of women. And I'm such an advocate for women, especially Black women, because I am one. So my company that I sold was me taking care of us in a different way. Now I'm focused on like us thriving and us living and us enjoying the life that we can create. And it's my way of still taking care of us in a sense. Just like Michelle said, like showing that, we're here, we're not only existing and surviving, but, we're thriving. And I think anybody wants that, no matter who you are, where you come from. And so it was more about that. And so much so that I want you in your move abroad journey to be well in it. I want you to stay abroad. If that is where your heart desires for you to be, I want you to be well in your transition. And I don't want that ball to be dropped because there's a lot of energy and effort that takes to get abroad. But now let's talk about, now that we're here, what next? And so in creating the summit, it was really about, let's have this conversation about how can you do this in a way that is not only sustainable, but that you thrive.
Okay, so what can people expect who come to this event?
So we're six amazing Black women who just so happen to live in San Miguel. That was not by design whatsoever. Who just so happen to live here. However, um, August 10th and 11th, it is really about, like, it's under the umbrella of family and finances. It's going to fit under there, and we'll be talking about coming abroad with children, marriage and being abroad, under finance. Who? Oh, right, single and being abroad. And then also creating a brick and mortar, which Michelle has done. Of course, I'll be talking about like wellness and sustainability as far as your health and how can you like nurture your body abroad in your new environment. That's really important because it doesn't matter where you go in the world, your diet and your lifestyle has to now acclimate to your new environment. And if you're not well, you can't do none of this other stuff. What else? Government contracting and freelancing and like really creating revenue streams for yourself abroad and how you can start that now so you can have a smoother transition when you get to your landing place. All right, investing with Dean. Yeah, growing your money. growing your money so you can have dividends that hit your account, so you can live off of that money that you've invested and continue to grow it. Then you can have a nest egg when you're older.
So who is supposed to come? Who should come to this summit? Is it for women? Is it for, I don't know. Y'all tell me.
I feel that it's, to me, it's for anyone who is considering moving to another country outside of the country that they live in. We are in Mexico, so it is kind of like, our experiences are here, but the information I think is global. I do think that it can be for anyone who is considering moving to any country that's outside of where they're living right now. It's a lot of food for thought in terms of what happens after. What happens after I get my things there? What happens after I get my residency? What happens after I, booked my space for a year? Whatever. It's like, did you sit down and think about what next, right? How do I integrate into the community? What is the community like? Is it easy for me to land here? Because people start getting a lot of depression. A lot of people that have tried this without a plan, they end up leaving. Um, or the challenges they weren't ready for. So I think that this is really to help them get ready for what happens after the dust settles. The conversations
Well,
that
I'm happy to hear that because a lot of the focus in this space is on how to get, but not on how to stay abroad or like, okay, what comes next? What do? You get there and you've got these dreams of creating this new life, but like, how does that work? How do you put that into action? So I'm very happy to hear that y'all will be filling that hole there.
And like both of you guys are examples because you guys have been abroad, living abroad for, over 5 years. So you guys have experienced it. I'm still newer, obviously, in it. But I will say this too, whatever is lying dormant is gonna surface, and one of our friends, she met with someone today and she says this young lady has so much anxiety, and she has a lot of like energy that is just, and I think we're coming over with the thought process of it has to be, this is where I come. She's from the Bay, so it's like this energy. And, you know, even in Mexico City, which is New York on steroids, people are still kind of we're just going to take our time. I really believe that it is, a United States thing, and it can be very foreign because now you're dealing with who am I? Who am I now? And wait a minute, I didn't deal with this. So people often find themselves. That's why I love the fact that Rashida, flourishing free Zalani, that she is a psychotherapist in this space and she lives in Merida, but we have like, there's mental health support abroad as well because you will be tapping into it. And if you don't, you're going to think you need to. So there's resources out there for us.
And I want to say too, for people to understand that life still happens abroad, right?
Yeah.
The things you encountered over there, whether it's, bills, health problems, relationship problems, problems in general with the space you live in, your landlord, it happens here too. We're not on vacation, even though there is more ease, we're still lifing abroad. So I think people really need to come and be prepared in addition to the challenges of not fully understanding the cultural differences. The language is always something. And I think that that can be something where after the honeymoon part kind of starts to fade, people start getting overwhelmed and discouraged or whatever it might be. And also, if you live in a place where you don't have the community, that as well. So there's a lot to think about. And as Tracy said, we've both been here for 5 years. There's a whole lot of things I could think about and say, life was life and hard, you know. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to do it here, or I'm going to do it somewhere else. So just being aware.
And we don't want all of the work that goes into moving abroad to go in vain. It's a lot of work, especially for me. We left in 2023. And just for us to dismantle our life from selling our house and the whole transitional period, that's a lot of work. And so we don't want that part of the hard work that one has done to be in vain. We want you to feel like this was worth it, regardless of any challenges that may have come up. This was worth it. I made the right decision.
So, the Redefining Life Abroad Summit is taking place in August. It is virtual, so no matter where you are in the world, you can participate. There is a link in the description so that you can snag a ticket to this event. Is there anything else that you ladies think needs to be said that we haven't said?
And then, day two of the summit, people will have the opportunity to meet with us, on their own, not individually, but in a group setting by selecting, like, oh, I want more from this talk. So I can meet with, in their group talk, on the 11th, because we really wanted to give them the information. Okay, now let's get serious. So they will have the opportunity to sign up to meet with us in our group setting, specific to our talk. So it wasn't like a day of just talk, or 2 days of straight talks. It's like, we're going to hit you one day with some talks. Now we're going to get you in a group setting that you want more information. So I'm excited about that structure and that setup, because that was something that I don't know who suggested that. I think it was Bobby.
Feel like, it's a conversation that I think is important, or multiple conversations that I feel that are very important to have in regard to what happens after, and that you can redefine yourself, but sometimes you might need some, not just inspiration but guidance on how to do that.
That part right there, because a lot of it is heavy on the inspiration. I think about folks on TikTok and on IG, heavy, heavy on the inspiration, not so much on the guidance. So, if you are considering a move abroad, or you're not happy with the life that you are currently leading in the United States, or it's not making you feel the greatest, uh, maybe a move abroad is the thing that's going to fix it for you. And this event sounds like the place to get I don't think anybody can hear y'all talk about your experiences and not get some inspiration, but I love that they'll also get the guidance piece as well. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.